What's up, everyone? It's Lan here with another episode of the Cheeseheadz Weekly Podcast. We're going to have a little bit of a more fun show today. We're going to bring Troy on. Before we do that, just be sure you subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you get it. Subscribe on YouTube. You can follow me on social media at Cheeseheads_weekly. That's on Instagram, Twitter, or X at Cheeseheads_W. Be sure to subscribe, comment. Got my first comments on YouTube the other day. Fantastic. Check out the Q&As and polls on Spotify. Rate the show wherever you can. Show's available pretty much everywhere, and new episodes come out every Tuesday. Without further ado, on the show today, we're going to just, talk quick Super Bowl thoughts here with Troy. We'll also give my season awards for the Packers, talk about, quarterbacks, what, good versus great quarterbacks, I guess. And then we'll talk about the Packers kicker situation. All right, let's jump right into it. And we'll bring Troy on the show here. What were your quick thoughts? We'll start with just your quick thoughts overall on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, quick thoughts on the Super Bowl. Well, one, I was disappointed Kansas City won again. Did not want to see those guys win at all. It's not that I love San Francisco, it's just that I cannot stand Kansas City more than
Yeah.
San Francisco. But it's just interesting, watching the game. What I thought was interesting is not a single offensive line holding call against Kansas City the whole game. In fact, in their last three Super Bowls that they've won, not a single offensive line holding call has been made. Can you believe that? And there was one play in particular, there's two in particular, where I remember Bosa was coming around the corner, clearly saw the hold, saw the takedown, the
Yep.
arm right around the takedown, and another time he was virtually tackled, no call, no penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just unbelievable, and those can be game changers. Now, Kansas City, keep in mind, was the most penalized team in the NFL going into that game in the regular season, and not a single offensive line holding call. So I'm just saying they let them play, but then the results are the results. And so I guess the other thing too, Lyman, is this is what I actually hated. The flashes over to the booth and seeing Taylor Swift with Ice Spice and all her posse, and you know, giving their little hand gestures, which some of those hand gestures, I'll just flat out say, were satanic in nature. And so I'm seeing this,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to put up with this and watch this garbage. And then they pan over to Brock Purdy's parents, and his dad's got his eyes closed. And a lot of times what he does is he prays for his kid as he's playing the game. And I thought, what a contrast, and that
Yeah.
just made my like for Brock Purdy go much higher than that. And then the last thing I'll just say real quick, if I can, is even more after the Super Bowl's over, just the public drunkenness of the Chiefs players on display for all America to see,
Yep.
all their fans to see, all the kids that follow them and look up to them, their role models to see. Kelsey's so drunk, and Mahomes, he's drunk. They're on stage making fools of
Yeah.
themselves, I think. And that, the
Yeah.
celebration was embarrassing. And I thought, man, I mean, and then they pan away from Kelsey. He actually passes out, and I don't get it. I mean, if I won a Super Bowl, I mean, the Packers won a Super Bowl, and when they beat the Steelers, Super Bowl 45, and I remember they had a nice celebration in Lambeau Field. Fans came there despite the cold weather, to cheer their Packer players, and they came out. They were sober, they were well versed, they spoke well, they thanked the fans, they were professional, and it was quite the contrast. And I just, it just seems
Mm-hmm.
like you got a bunch of adults that are trapped in high school kids' bodies who just won a Super Bowl and they party. And then the last thing I'll say is, just seeing the images of Willie Gay laying on the ground, shirtless, after he was hopping on cars, totally drunk, and just laying there. Just I actually felt sorry for them all. It's just like that's how you're going to celebrate. You're not even going to remember it because you were so
Yeah.
drunk. And I just thought it was kind of pitiful.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I've I kind of went on a little bit of a rant last year when
Hmm.
the Chiefs had their Super Bowl parade, and this year uh, certainly wasn't any better, and if anything, it was worse. So
Hmm.
um, I guess Chiefs have won too many games, and that's what happens. But no, that definitely should not be happening, no matter how many games you win. And um, yeah, I won't talk
Yeah.
too much about that, but
Well, and I don't want to
definitely,
throw all the players under the bus there either. There's probably some in Kansas City that players that it's a 53-man roster. There's coaches there that might have been equally embarrassed by it too. I mean, these are just the stars, but they're the representatives of the team.
yeah,
And
yep,
there probably were some that were disappointed in that too. But they're not going to say anything because they're
hmm,
not going to do that. But I'm sure there were some that would look at that and shake their head.
yep, makes sense. So,
Mhm.
uh, 49ers, they Kyle Shanahan possibly made a questionable decision in overtime regarding
Mhm.
his strategy going into that. Multiple Niners players, after the fact, said they didn't really know the rules to overtime. Kyle Shanahan said that he did have a plan going into it, and the Chiefs seemed very well prepared. There was a video apparently released where the Chiefs were celebrating after the 49ers decided to take the ball. You ask me, I don't think it's a horrible decision by Kyle Shanahan. I don't think it was. It's possible that the that it was a bad decision, but you never can tell. They could have got a stop on the Chiefs.
Mhm.
They were close. There was a 4th and 1 at one point, I believe. And then after the game, Steve Wilks, their defensive coordinator, was fired. Some people were questioning that a little bit, surprised by that after their defense played pretty well up until this point. Just what did you see, and what kind of were your thoughts going into the overtime, the the decision by Kyle Shanahan, and then that final drive, and what do you think led into the Steve Wilks firing?
Yeah, good question. I think, if San Fran goes down and gets the touchdown, they kind of set the tone. They put the pressure on Kansas City, and I think that was probably Shanahan's mentality going into that. They ended up getting the field goal instead, um, but you could just see, um, you know, here's what's interesting when you give the ball and when you take the ball first. Kansas City, they have the opportunity to go for it, on fourth down if they ever get in that position. So basically, it's always four down territory. So they get an extra play on offense to kind of convert, where San Francisco didn't have that luxury. Like you said, they had a fourth down. They had to take the field goal because if we don't get this, we get 0 points. To me, I would have
Yeah,
probably kicked off and just took the ball last. And I think it is an advantage in overtime for that, for the very reason, because one, how many points do I got to get to win this? Do I have to get a field goal to win? Or do I have to get a field goal to tie? Or do I have to get a touchdown to win or a touchdown to tie? Well, they knew the answer to
yeah,
the question. They just needed to get the touchdown or a field goal. They were in good shape if they get a field goal. So to me, they were in much more control. And just looking at Wilkes on the sideline when Kansas City started getting that momentum and marching down the field, Wilkes looked lost. He had that glazed look like, oh no, like
hmm,
we're in trouble. And I didn't see that. Spagnola, he was always fired up. He always looked like he was in control. Wilkes looked like he was in over
yeah,
his head a little bit, which was really surprising, but he didn't he have that look. He had that look.
yeah,
And they did do a pretty good job, during the game, but they didn't get that stop when they needed it. And I think in that big of a game, it doesn't really surprise me. I think if they want to upgrade that position, they probably can. They still have the players that are there, but it seemed to fall apart at the end. I don't know. If you noticed this or not, but it seemed like he kind of backed off and kind of played the Joe Barry defense, where it was like, let's give him that bend but don't break. Let's give him that big cushion.
hmm,
And that ended up, they took all that underneath stuff and just, just kept taking what they were giving them and marched down the field. I think they needed to play the same aggressive defense, and that might have, and he didn't, and that's probably what cost him his job.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think I did notice that he was started playing off, and then there were a few
Hmm.
times he went all out blitz, and the cover guys were still way off,
Yeah.
and that's a bad sign because you can just throw it. It allows a quarterback to easily get the ball away. If you're playing press, if you can hold those receivers back for just long enough for the rush to get to the quarterback to get to Patrick Mahomes, then you have a chance at you know at a sack or at that ball at least falling incomplete. But
Hmm.
instead, it's just you can just throw an easy screen. You can dump it off real quick because they have all that cushion there, and we saw a lot of that from Joe Barry as well. And yeah, that's kind of what I noticed. That's kind of what my guess is what Kyle Shanahan was thinking when he fired Wilkes. Just that, you know, didn't have that aggressive sound play style there on defense towards the end of the game or scheme on defense compared to what Spagnola was doing. And I thought Spagnola once again just called a really great game and on the defensive side of the ball. And the Kansas City defense was pretty lights out, especially when it mattered. And that's exactly what you want when you're playing in the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
uh, we have some goat chatter again here with Patrick Mahomes
Hmm.
winning another Super Bowl. I'll just ask you this. I'll just shoot it straight to you. Is Patrick Mahomes the goat?
No, Tom Brady is. How about that answer?
Yeah,
I just,
I like
it's
it.
kind of like I like Tom Brady. I mean, he's the GOAT. I mean, if we're talking GOAT, it's Tom Brady. Um,
Hmm.
talk to me when you get to that level. But I'm hoping the guy doesn't. You know, it's going to be hard to repeat what Brady did. But Brady's the GOAT. I mean, guy's drafted where he's drafted. You know, never
Hmm.
really has, other than Gronkowski, he didn't have a ton of talent like at wide receiver into that stud guy. And that just shows you don't need a stud guy. You just need a lot of good
Hmm.
guys that play well as a team. And boy, Brady, he played with a chip on his shoulder all the time. He kind of reminded me of Michael Jordan of basketball. Jordan just, he always looked for that competitive edge that would just, he played with that chip, like, oh, you're going to disrespect me? Okay, I'll score 50 on you, and
Hmm.
that was what Brady did, and there'll be nobody like Brady. And Mahomes, yeah, he's won some games. I'm not, give him credit for that, but we'll see if he has that same longevity that Brady did. But great, Brady's my goat.
Yep. You could certainly make a case for it. Just the fact that he's played 6 seasons as the starter,
Hmm.
been in the Super Bowl 4 of those 6,
Hmm.
and has now won 3 of them. 3 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and just went back to back. He has 2 NFL MVPs. He's only 28 years old, and he has made it to the AFC Championship in every single season as a starter, which was also pretty impressive. One of those years he did lose to Tom Brady. I believe that was his first season as a starter. He lost to Tom Brady in the championship game. So there is a case to be made. However, you did mention the difference in the draft. Brady was a 7th round pick, if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken, and Mahomes a
Right.
first-round pick. Loads of natural talent. Brady never really had the talent. He was smart. He played
Hmm.
good, sound football, and he just had all the right um, skills that took a lot of work to develop. He
Hmm.
didn't have just that amazing natural talent, ability to throw the football the way Patrick Mahomes does, but he worked hard, had some good coaching along the way, and was able to just play. smarter than everyone else. And I mean, you watch guys like Brady and Rodgers play the game. It's just their ability to read defenses and go from there is pretty impressive. And that's really uh, how Brady uh, made things work, even without great teams around him. So I do agree with that. Mahomes is he's done some impressive stuff. You can't discount that, but yeah, he needs to start cleaning things up off the field, or he's headed for a train wreck down the road. I think. Uh,
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you can win on talent, but and and he's very talented. But Brady worked hard at his craft. He always picked one thing I'm going to get better at this year, and then he was very driven. 7 Super Bowls. Um, I hope Mahomes doesn't catch that. It's hard to get to a Super Bowl. It's hard to get to him. He's
mhm,
been fortunate, so but there's other teams that are getting better, and it's going to get harder for them. And I do think that um, we can go through all those teams and what we think is going to happen, but you still got a really tough AFC uh, conference. You got a lot of good quarterbacks. You got a lot of young quarterbacks coming up now too that are pretty good. So it's not going to get any easier for the Chiefs. And would it surprise me if Buffalo knocked them off one of these years? Nope, they wouldn't. So I think there's definitely some teams that could give them a run, and we'll see how it goes. But it's very very difficult to get there. And as Packer fans, we know that, right? We had some good quarterbacks, and we didn't get there
mhm.
that much. So Kansas City's been fortunate. They've had things kind of go their way. They're a good team. Andy Reid's a great coach. We'll see if they can keep it going. But I'm hoping that Brady keeps that record and that Mahomes doesn't catch him.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about quarterbacks a little bit.
Mhm.
Uh, just in general, the position in the NFL. And there's some guys that are good at the position. There's some guys that I would consider great at the position. So I've been kind of just fascinated ever since we talked about 2 weeks ago our top 10 quarterbacks. Just what makes a great quarterback and what makes a quarterback elite.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, one of the things I think that makes a great quarterback is, does the game slow down for them? I was kind of, looking at who I think is you know, has been a really good coach for Green Bay this year, and I think of Tom Clements, and I think of the work that he's done with the quarterbacks, and I think what makes a really good quarterback is having that good quarterbacks coach. Green Bay's been fortunate to have him. He stayed on. He came back 2022, and he's been working with Love, and
Hmm.
um, and I think that's been a reason why Jordan Love has had success. It's the work that you put in when the cameras aren't rolling and when they're on those practice fields and when they're working on their game. We get to see the fruits of that labor when they play on Sunday and you see it come to life and you see it starting to click. But that doesn't just
Hmm.
happen by chance. It's all that behind the scenes work. And I think that's what makes quarterbacks great. There's some that quarterbacks in this league that really don't maybe have those coaches that can take them next level. I think Green Bay's one of those teams that has done that. I think Kansas City's done a good job with it. Joe Burrow, another good quarterback, and I think they've done a really good job developing their quarterbacks in Cincinnati. But I think one of the things that Love was working on this year, and that Tom Clements I was reading about, he said it was his footwork. Footwork is so
Hmm.
vitally important to the position, and with a proper drop, getting through your progressions, not getting stuck on a receiver, not being late with the ball,
Yeah.
understanding those route concepts, and then going through 1, 2, 3, and then if it's not there, go to your outlet quickly, um,
Yeah.
and then note that progression. And I think one thing that Clements give Love credit for was just his footwork rhythm and getting the ball off in time, and is where he's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think we saw that come to life this year during the regular season. And even the announcers are, look at his footwork. It's like when he throws off that, he kind of throws off that back foot and he gets them both feet in the air and he throws that ball, and then they'll flash back to Rodgers and Favre, and they'll show their footwork, and then they'll mirror that on the image on the screen, and they'll show you that it's very similar. Well, that doesn't just happen. That's coached. And so those
Hmm.
little things I think are, can what make quarterbacks go to those next level. And that's what I've seen with Love and his maturing quickly. And I think we just have good coaches all around him. Um, And so I'm closer to that in Green Bay than I am any other team. So I don't understand maybe all the what the
Hmm.
quarterback coaches do with other quarterbacks. But when you see guys have good seasons and develop, some of it's just they do have that pure talent. There's some that are more talented than Jordan Love. Um, Josh Allen is a tremendous talent, you know. Um, and there are some more athletic guys that are out there. But are they good at their footwork? Are they good at the progressions? Does the game slow down for them? Can they go through their reads, or do they get, jittery, and they just lose that confidence? And then I think of somebody like Dak Prescott. He puts up great numbers, but when he gets in those big games, he seems to crumble. And
Yep.
um, you know, mentally you got to be sharp and focused. And what I was impressed with Jordan Love this year is he never seemed to get rattled in those in the big games. He was just always calm,
Hmm.
good pocket presence, and I think those are the signs that, when you're scouting and looking for quarterbacks and coming out of the draft, those are the qualities you got to look for. And but then you got to coach those guys. When Rodgers was
Hmm.
drafted, I remember his arm was like up here when he carried the ball out of the pocket, and they quickly fixed that. But he held that
Hmm.
ball really high up by his ear when he dropped back to pass. And, they worked with him, developed him, um, and it turned out really well. But you got to have guys that have that talent, and then they got to be coachable. Are they coachable?
Yeah.
And you know, there's some guys that have all the talent in the world, but they're hard to coach. You think of guys that got drafted like a long time ago. It was in Detroit. They drafted Andre Ware was their quarterback, and he just never got it. Akili Smith was in Cincinnati, #1 pick, and top pick, and kind of flopped. Ryan Leaf was a big top pick, didn't make it. you know. So you got to
Hmm.
have the smarts too, and the ability to be able to be coached, and because talent will only take you so far.
Yep.
Um, that's what I've seen in that. That's how I would answer that question. And I've seen that with Love. And Green Bay, keep in mind, this is his third year. So they had a lot of time they could work with him. And I think if you can afford to do that in the NFL, it's going to pay big dividends for you versus drafting a guy and then starting him day one. You can do it, but um, it can be difficult. And I think you can almost ruin a guy by doing that because depending on how well it doesn't go, that can really be detrimental to their career and to how they finish. I think we can look at guys that have went that path too, and high draft picks that have never made it. And I think they didn't handle them right. And with the right system, like if let's say one of those quarterbacks would have came to Green Bay, I think of even like Justin Fields. Where would Justin Fields be today if he was Green Bay's quarterback? Would he be kind of that level today? Now they're looking at, well, maybe we'll go Caleb Williams and get rid of Fields. So it sets your organization, your franchise back a lot of years because look how many quarterbacks Chicago's drafted. Green Bay's drafted 3. Chicago's drafted what? I looked up the number one time. 30 some starters in the last since the
Yeah.
Favre era. What's up with
Yeah.
that? It's
Yeah.
coaching,
It's
and it's
crazy.
not developing your quarterbacks.
Hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of it is coaching. Um, yeah, I'd say the next step is winning, to be a
Hmm.
really great quarterback. You got to win games, got to be able to finish
Yep.
in the Super Bowl. And that's part of why we're not talking about Rodgers. We can't put Rodgers in that conversation of greatest of all time because he was a great talent. He put up a lot of good years. He would just only has one Super Bowl, and that's not a knock on Rodgers. That might not have always been Rodgers. He didn't seem to completely just fall apart in big moments. Some of it was bad luck, maybe, but that plays a big factor on whether you can actually be a truly great quarterback. And what you said about the Bears quarterback situation kind of leads me into the next topic I was thinking about talking about here. Just their quarterback situation right now, what they should do with Justin Fields. They currently do have control of the number one overall pick. We have Caleb Williams, a lot of Williams chatter, quarterback out of USC, who, if the Bears don't draft him number one overall, likely they're trading that pick so someone else can draft him number one overall. I really can't see the Bears not picking him at this point just because they have the number one overall pick. Teams might not be willing to move into that pick. And if you're at the number one overall pick and you got a guy like Caleb Williams, who's some people would say a generational talent at quarterback, I don't see how you can pass that up. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think the Bears should do about Justin Fields and whether they should draft a quarterback?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on how high you are on Caleb Williams, where you have him ranked on your board. If you think he's that can't miss guy and he's next generational
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, and you really believe that, yeah, I think they make the pick and they move Justin Fields, um, and I think that you could see that happening. Um, keep in mind Justin Fields was drafted number 11 overall 3 years ago. And he's a guy that I think the Bears have said that they really like as their
Yeah.
quarterback. They still, and of course they're going to say that because they want to be able to trade him. And
Yeah.
and I think he's a decent quarterback. Well, was he worth the number 11 pick overall? Now when you look at it, probably not. Is he a quarterback that you could build around yet? I think you could. You could keep him and go Marvin Harrison, and
Mm-hmm.
pair him up with DJ Moore, and you could have a really good team, But it depends on if you think that, think about this. Like when we had Love in year two, it's like, do we want to keep him or do we want to let Rodgers, continue and then let Love go? What do we Packers like? No, we're going to keep Love. So they saw something in him. And they were like, this is going to be the guy. They did the same thing when Favre was ready. Uh, I'm sorry, when Rodgers was ready to step in for Favre. So I
Yeah.
think, when Green Bay said, nope, Love's our guy, we're going to trade Rodgers, I'm like, okay, they they see something in him. That's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Bears can get it right. When you look at how many quarterbacks
Hard
situations
to
they've gotten
hard to
wrong,
trust that
it, it,
organization at this
it
point.
is. It's like, I mean, the Jay Cutler. I mean, you could just name quarterback after quarterback after quarterback, and they just cannot seem to get it right. So I think no matter what they do here, it's probably not going to be right. So um, I don't know. I mean, and then if you bring in a Caleb Williams, um, you better be right on it. You better be right. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then do you play him right away, or do you keep Justin Fields and let him be your starter for a couple more years, and then develop Williams? I don't think they'll do that because if you draft him number one, they're going to want him to play um,
Yeah.
overall, especially first pick of draft. Um, I'm not entirely sold on Caleb Williams. I don't know if you are, but I think he's okay. I don't know if he's a can't miss number one. I got to have him guy kind of a guy. Um, I don't know. He doesn't, I don't know why, but he just doesn't give me that vibe. He doesn't give me that, oh, if Green Bay was number one in this position, I don't know if I'd want to go that route with it unless I was 100% sold on him. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not, but We'll see what they do, but I think they'll draft Williams, and then I think they'll look to move Fields. That's what I think they'll do.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be my guess as well. Yeah, I've I was whenever I first heard of Caleb Williams, he was just lighting it up, and in college, just people were talking about him, very very highly at
Hmm.
that point. The more he had a little bit of a down year here last year, and
Hmm.
also, from what I've listened to some podcasts, mainly some dynasty fantasy football podcasts, just to try to learn more about these rookies um, for dynasty. But um, the things I've heard about Caleb Williams have not been all good. He certainly seems to have plenty of weaknesses as well as strengths, and I mean he has some great qualities, and that's yeah. I'm not sure I see enough in him. I mean, if I'm the Bears, the thing is, if you're going to draft a quarterback, Caleb Williams is probably the best quarterback you're going to find for a while.
Hmm.
If he's truly the best quarterback in this class, and this is a good class of quarterbacks, it's probably going to be a while before you find another guy that's really worth a number one overall pick. I mean, you look at last year's draft class at quarterback, it
Hmm.
wasn't great. And
Right.
so if you're going to draft a quarterback, yeah, this is probably the year to do it. And I mean, it's going to be a while till you find someone as talented as Caleb Williams is. So that's probably what you want to do. I am not completely out on Fields. I'm not sure he has the ability as a passer I did, to be able to actually win a lot of games. We talked about what makes a quarterback really good, and sometimes it just comes down to the quarterback play. You look at, the Super Bowl is, a pretty good example. It came when it came down to the wire. It was Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes, and Brock Purdy, I don't think did anything wrong. It's just he's not as talented. He's not quite as good of a quarterback as Patrick Mahomes is. And when it came down to it, quarterback versus quarterback, Patrick Mahomes won out. So I think you can have a really stacked team. I think 49ers did have the better team in that game, but it might not actually win you Super Bowls. And so I really like the thought of building around Fields. He does have plenty of great natural talent. And I mean, you add a Marvin Harrison alongside DJ Moore, and you got yourself like two number one wide receivers, except they're on the same team. And so
Hmm.
that would be pretty incredible as well. We'll see what they do. If they're going to draft a quarterback, yeah, you probably have to do it this year. And
Hmm.
if you draft a quarterback, it's probably not going to work to have Fields and Williams both on the same team. They're going to want to start Williams right away. I mean, they did. Mahomes worked out, and they sat him for 1 year. Uh, so I just don't see it happening with Williams being as talented as he is. He's going to want to play right away,
Right.
and I also don't think that the Bears are going to want to keep Fields when they have Williams. So I think, yeah,
No,
that's what they'll do. They'll draft Williams, move on from Fields. But
I think so. I mean, and think of this: if you draft Williams, you still have a top. You have a number, I think, what, a 5 pick, the top pick. So you can pick up Malik Neighbors. You can pick up another stud receiver with that pick. So you do have
mhm.
some options there to still. You wouldn't get Marvin Harrison, but you could still get an elite playmaker. I think in that as well with so I think you could go that route. I think when you look at Justin Fields' numbers though last year, and I think that's what Chicago's doing when you look at how he ranked and how he did. His numbers were not good. Um, you know, uh, just a quick stat here of the 40 quarterbacks who threw for at least 50 passes in the fourth quarter last season. Fields ranked 39th with a passer rating of 53.4. Only Bailey Zappi was worse. So when you look at some of those stats, I think
Yeah.
that's what gives Chicago pause. Yeah, Fields is showing some flashes of brilliance. He's showing that, but is he the guy that's going to take it to that next level? I'd say he's not. And if Chicago says, "Yep, he's not," um, I do think you have to go. You have to excite the fan base. You have to go Caleb Williams. You could draft
Hmm.
an edge rusher with the next pick that you have. That's, I think, again, number 5, or you could draft another wide receiver to partner with DJ Moore, and I think you could really build some excitement in Chicago. I'm
Hmm.
positive that's what they're going to do, and as a fan, if I were a Chicago fan, that's probably the route I'd want him to go to. I think Fields has had his time to show what he can do. If you're hanging on to him, well, maybe he'll go to that next level next year. Well, if he doesn't, do you really want to stare at Caleb Williams in the league and I'm like, we could have had him, we could have had him, we could have had him, and I don't think
Yeah.
Chicago's willing to take that chance. Um,
No.
so I think that's exactly what will happen.
All right. So I guess we'll transition into some Packers talk and talk about the Packers kicker situation here real quick.
Mhm.
I will mention that they did choose to add some competition pretty soon after the season ended for the Packers. They signed uh, former Georgia kicker Jack Podlesny. I believe he might have spent some time on the Vikings practice squad, if I remember correctly. And just a quick note on Anders Carlson. Brian Gutekunst had a press conference a while back, and he was asked about not adding a kicker to start the playoffs. And he said they looked around and considered Carlson to be their best option. So, I mean, that's a solid endorsement of Carlson. And I don't think it's just that. I think that what Goody was saying is actually correct. They probably did look for a kicker, and oftentimes there's not always great options on the open market. So,
Right.
I believe you had some thoughts on the whole situation, and had struggled his rookie year. So, what are your thoughts on what the Packers should do with him?
Yeah, I mean, he was a 6th round draft pick out of Auburn. So they took a chance and said, well, let's take a kicker in that 6th round. Um, and then the stats don't lie. I mean, you look at his numbers. I texted a friend of mine during Packer games and said he said the common theme is he's going to cost us a game. He's going to cost us a game.
Yep.
Now they lost to San Fran by 3. He missed a field goal. Did that cost them the game? Contributed to it. Um,
Yeah.
so it definitely didn't help to miss that field goal. And it's not that it was a like a people are going to miss field goals, but when you look at his rankings, um, he was 27 of 33 kickers, so his field goal percentage was 81.8%. So um, postseason, he was 2 of 3. So
Yep.
he just 27 to 33. That's not going to cut it in the NFL. You gotta be a higher percentage than that. Extra points too. He's the only kicker to miss 5 extra points in a regular season. The next one closest to him missed no more than 3. So
Hmm.
you drafted this guy, um, and it's not looking so hot. And now you can stick with him. So I agree. I mean, like you got to bring in some competition now. I
Hmm.
don't. You couldn't have brought in competition. Um, it was a tough spot. You draft a guy 6th round, you could bring in somebody else. There's no guarantee they're gonna. I mean, they're a free agent for a reason. There's no guarantee that they're going to come in and do better. So they stuck with them because they drafted them, and that's what Green Bay does. They stick with their draft picks that they draft, and they give them a chance to
Hmm.
develop. When they drafted them, little did they know that they'd be in the playoffs, and I don't think maybe they didn't count on that or look that far ahead.
That's true.
And then there they are in their playoffs. It's like, oh boy, hopefully it doesn't come down to this. And man, it kind of came down to it in the San Fran game. But when he was with Auburn, Carlson, he wasn't that good in college either. He made 72% of his field goals. From 50 plus, he was 29%, and from 40 to 49, he was 64%. So this isn't a guy that lit it up exactly in college. So when they
Mm-hmm.
drafted him, it was kind of even a questionable. Could have even picked him up as a free agent, not even draft. Would have he went undrafted? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and he was last in touchback percentage, 43%. But that was by design too. Green Bay did like to try. They were number one in pinning their opponents inside the 20, so that was by design. So we won't fault him for that. But it reminds me of '97 when Green Bay drafted a kicker by the name of Brett Conway. Um, and he was in the third round, and he had a little bit of a different. Um, he struggled, and then they had Ryan Longwell come in, and Ryan Longwell ended up winning the job, and then he was their Green Bay's kicker for a number of years. So that can happen. So I wouldn't be opposed to looking at bringing in another kicker like they have, and give him. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got to give the guy competition, make him think he could lose his job, and if
Yeah.
another guy comes in and outshines him, and then proves he's, I think Green Bay would make the move and and move to it. Um, you got to have a solid kicker. Every time he tried out on the field, I don't know about you, but did your heart go, oh boy, I hope he makes this?
Yep. Yep. For sure.
Okay, if you're thinking that way with your kicker, it's probably not the right kicker for your team, and that's an area Green Bay
Mm-hmm.
is going to have to address. I looked at the draft for this year coming up, and there's a kicker out of Alabama who's actually got some really solid numbers, and some feel like he could be a fifth to seventh round draft pick. So
Mm-hmm.
would Green Bay draft a kicker again? I don't know if they do it again, but if you feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's an upgrade and it's better than what you have in free agency, maybe you make that move. But um, it's a weakness for sure that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree. And I wasn't that high on him
Mm,
coming out. Just the fact that he was drafted um, so high, what people said about him, and like he never was that great at making specifically long kicks in college. And now that he's been with the Packers, supposedly he has a big leg, but yet he never kicked touchbacks.
mhm,
And at times during the season, I really wished he would kick a touchback every now and then because the Packers were starting to struggle with tackling. And specifically in
mhm,
that 49ers game, they got lucky a few times. I mean, Anthony Johnson Jr., I remember, had a potentially touchdown saving tackle,
mhm,
just barely able to trip a guy up as he was, likely going to break into the open field and score kick return touchdown. So,
mhm,
uh, like, just kick it out of the end zone. Like, does he not have the leg to do that? But yet supposed to have a big leg. So the whole situation is a little bit confusing to me. I'm willing to give him potentially
mhm.
another year, at least another off season, as kind of the guy, and just bring in competition and hope that'll help him get better. But you know, if he goes, another season for sure, another season after this season, you for sure have to get someone different. Look at getting someone different and trying to figure that position out. Then, so I
Yeah,
am willing to be patient with him for a little bit longer, but there's
yeah.
definitely a limit.
I'd be patient with them through the preseason and then have a plan in case it doesn't work out. That's one
Yep.
position where you can see in practice conditions and preseason games, you can give a guy a lot of work. And if he's still struggling at that level, it may be time to make that move. But that's where he's going to win or lose his job, I feel. And he's already on the edge, I think, because, in his last 5 games, he missed at least one kick. And
Hmm.
you just, when you're in the playoffs or in tight games, you do not want to lose because of your field goal kicker. There's too
Hmm.
much work that goes into the season to lose it on a field goal kicker's legs. So he's gotta be solid. And if he's not, you gotta move on.
Yep. All right, we'll get into the Packers season awards for last season. I'll just read over mine quickly. You can give
Mhm.
any, corrections, um, thoughts on the players I picked for these different awards that I came up with. I'll start with MVP. This one was pretty easy. Jordan Love. When you're the quarterback and you have that good of a season, you're gonna be MVP, whether it's NFL or just a random team award from a small podcast. Uh, yeah, Jordan Love, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Aaron Jones. He's probably the only other guy that I would have considered for MVP. And the reason I didn't put him there because he was injured a lot of the season, but he came back with a vengeance and was amazing for them down the stretch. Defensive Player of the Year, Kenny Clark. I thought he did set had a career high in sacks in the season. I believe it was 7.5 sacks on the year, and was just consistently disruptive. A lot of pressures, and even ones that didn't finish in sacks, and I thought he played really well. Offensive Rookie of the Year is Jaden Reed, led the team in receiving yards, and really great rookie year. Really excited about his future in Green Bay. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Carl Brooks. Towards the end of the year, he was making at least one impact play per game, and just wasn't on the field that much. A rotational guy, but found ways to impact the game somehow and really helped the Packers down the stretch as well. Comeback Player of the Year, Rashawn Gary, coming off the ACL injury. He was good pretty much right away. They limited his snaps, brought it back slow, and he was immediately putting pressure on the quarterback. Slowed down a little bit towards the end of the season, specifically with the sack numbers. Still was putting some pressure on the quarterback. I'm excited to see what this new coaching staff can do for Gary. I think he has another, could take another leap yet to become truly dominant. And so, yeah, this offseason, I'm kind of excited to see what he can turn into down the road. But Packers did lock him up for a while, signed him to an extension. So that's exciting that we'll have him around for a good many years. Biggest draft value. I put Dontavian Wicks on here, drafted in the 5th round, and had a really great rookie year. And I think he has the potential to be the Green Bay's #1 receiver over top guys, like Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. I think he has the potential to be the best out of this deep group of receivers. And that's pretty awesome for a 5th round pick.
That is.
Biggest draft bust. Lou Nichols III, and he's not with the team anymore, so I think that speaks for himself. Clutch Player of the Year, Romeo Doubs. I got that one from Elijah. Thought I should put that in there, and I thought that was a really nice addition to the list. Romeo Doubs' playoff stats are impressive. I believe he had PFF's highest grade in the playoffs of a 90 something, right on 90-ish. And yeah, Romeo Doubs stepped it up at the right times, and I thought he was pretty clutch all the way through the season. Loves go-to option on 3rd downs and in the red zone. Nice, solid year from Romeo Doubs. Most improved player of the year, Rasheed Walker. He started out the season not great and continued to get better, and now looks like potentially a future starter at left tackle for the team, depending on what happens with David Bakhtiari. And I mean, even if they keep Bakhtiari for one more year, Walker could be their left tackle of the future. I think he showed enough to be that and continually got better throughout the season. Most regressed player of the year. It could be other options for this one. I decided to put John Runyon. In years past, I thought he was solid. I think this year he struggled a little bit, especially towards the end. Well, no, not towards the end. Towards the beginning. Towards the end, he actually stepped it up a good bit, specifically in the playoffs. But did struggle with an ankle injury at one point. Possibly that was the issue, playing through that. Ankle injuries definitely can slow you down when you're an offensive lineman. But uh, he's a free agent this year. We'll see what happens. Offensive lineman of the year is Zach Tom. Uh, we haven't talked about him much at all, and that's a good thing. He was rock solid all year long at right tackle, and excited about him. Very versatile, has the potential, I think, to play all 5 positions if we want him to. But he was amazing at right tackle, so Packers might not want to move him. Undrafted rookie of the year is Malik Heath, one of my favorite players on the team. Plays with a lot of energy, as do many of other Packers players, but really enjoyed watching Malik Heath in his limited snaps with all these great receivers they suddenly have. Special teamer of the year, Eric Wilson. If the Packers would have won the game in San Francisco, he would have been the guy they talked about. Could have been in a game that they eventually did lose. It could have been a catastrophic end. It could have ended a lot sooner with Keyshawn Nixon after a big return fumbled it. And Eric Wilson did a terrific job, just cover up that fumble with the ball bouncing on the ground. A terrific play. He is a free agent. I hope they bring him back because I think he's a great veteran to have just to play special teams, and was rock solid. Made a lot of tackles all year long. Most underrated player I have down here, Preston Smith, a veteran. He's getting older, but I hope the Packers keep him around for pretty much. May as well just keep him around till he runs out of gas. He's just a good veteran leader in the locker room. Guys respect him, and I think he quietly had a really solid season. Most overrated player, I put down Rashawn Gary, just because, at least among Packers fans, some Packers fans like to put him up with the best of the best, the Nick Bosas, the Myles Garretts of the world. I don't think he's quite there yet, but like I said, I'm excited to see what will happen in the offseason to see if he can get there, because I think he does have that potential. Surprise player of the year, Bo Melton, another really fun player to watch, kind of in the same boat as Malik Heath. Plays with a lot of energy and really came on. I think he is legit. I don't think this was a fluke, and I'm really excited to see what he can do as well coming up, next season and beyond. I came up with a few more here. Assistant coach of the year, I put down wide receivers coach Jason Vrabel. He definitely could be getting offensive coordinator interviews soon if he keeps this up, because just what I talked about with guys like Bo Melton, Malik Heath, and Dontavian Wicks. The wide receivers were tremendous this year, and I think he was a big part of that. There were numerous other ways I could go with that, and if I'm hearing you right, I think you might have a different one. Biggest play of the year or impact. I think there was more plays that were more fun that I thought was a great play on the year, but if I had to say impact play, I would say a touchdown. I probably should have wrote this down a little better. It was a touchdown, pretty long touchdown to Jaden Reed, right in between two defenders in the Minnesota Vikings game, week 17, I believe it was. In a must-win game, Packers had to win that game and beat the Chicago Bears as well to have any chance of making the playoffs. And Jordan Love hit Jaden Reed earlier on in the game. Packers were up 3-0. That put them up 10-0, and they were able to win the game and eventually make the playoffs. So as far as impact play, that's what I would say. But if I had to say biggest play, it would probably have to be one of the big plays to Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs and Jordan Love were made a lot of really highlight reel type plays happen, and really fun combo to watch. As far as the turning point on the season, I think it'd probably have to be the Steelers game. If I just look at the game log here, we had a a rough stretch of games. What was it? 4 weeks with losses to the Lions, Raiders, Broncos, and Vikings, and then the Packers came out and were able to beat the Staffordless Rams 20-3. But you know, you wonder if that's just kind of a fluke because with Brett Rippon out there starting for the Rams, and so they came out next week versus the Steelers in Pittsburgh. They lost the game, but showed some promise. And Jordan Love threw some bad interceptions and kind of got the team like, all right, we're going to change something. And they came back. They changed something, beat the Chargers, and that seemed a little bit fluky. But then they came back out again on Thanksgiving, beat the Lions, and then hosted the Chiefs, beat them as well. And so that was kind of a big three stretch of games following that Steelers game. I think that's kind of what turned them around. And then they did lose two in a row to the Giants and Buccaneers, mainly because of the bad defensive play on defense. But then able to finish out the season strong, 3 straight wins, and make the playoffs. So, like I said, that Steelers game I think was the turning point. They showed enough promise, and but then there's mistakes, late in the game, kind of uh, got them motivated, I guess, to play better, and they did from that point forward. What are your thoughts on everything I just mentioned right there? Kind of a lot, but
That's okay. Yeah, we'll start with the turning point of the season since you just finished with that one. So we'll kind of dovetail right off that. Um,
yeah,
I look at the Detroit Thanksgiving game as the kind of the turning point for them is what I voted for here or what I had written down. They won that game
mm-hmm,
going into Thanksgiving. Detroit's always tough to go into for Thanksgiving, and they were playing good football, beat them 29-22. At that
mm-hmm,
time, Green Bay had a 6-7 record, and they win that game. Love 22 of 32, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers in that game. And just to me, that was like the turning point. I know and I looked at that Steeler game too, and I think that was the beginning of it. Um, Detroit's where it was validated. And then I think
yep,
it was another signature win when they beat Kansas City. I mean, no one thought they were going to beat Kansas City. And so that's my impact play of the year too, is when Green Bay beat Kansas City, and then in that game, Green Bay was up on that in that game. They were up 24-19, so they were up by 5. There was just 5 minutes left in the game. Mahomes had the ball. We're thinking, oh, here we go. They're at midfield, and what happens? Patrick Mahomes lofts one up to fade to Sky Moore, and Keyshawn Nixon um,
yeah,
with that interception it made a beautiful play on the ball and just just snagged it out of the air. It was a tough interception, tough play.
mm-hmm,
Gets the catch. Green Bay takes over. They convert that to a field goal. Now it's 27-19, and that pretty much sealed the game. They won it because
yep,
of that. So that to me was like an impact play. If he doesn't do that, we can't say that Kansas City would have scored, but we've seen it and where
yeah,
they've done those things, and then they would have been up. Um, they'd have had what would have been 26-24 at the time. Um, so they'd have been up 2. We'd had to rely on Carlson for a game-winning field goal possibly, and
yeah,
who knows if he'd have made it. So that was a huge win. So to me, that was the impact play of the year. Keyshawn Nixon's interception against the great Patrick Mahomes. So I thought that was just a beautiful play. So that's where I'd go there. Assistant coach, I did tip my hand earlier. You're right. Tom Clements. I just
yep,
feel like just his work with Love. was tremendous, and it just was no
Yeah.
surprise because he's done this before. So I think
Yeah.
without Clements, I don't know that Love takes those extra steps that we've seen him take to make
Yeah.
his team better. So that's where I would go.
Yeah.
As
I
far as
like that.
Packer, yeah, I just Clements is just. I'm so glad that he came back and he worked with Love. You know, he could
Yeah.
have very easily just walked away, and he
Yeah.
stuck with it. So he's just kind of that. You don't hear much about Tom Clements, but he's one of those unsung heroes that definitely needs credit. Um,
Yep.
yeah, and as far as Packer awards, I agree with all the awards that you gave out. I think they're spot on. I think they're right on the money. With Aaron Jones being the Offensive Player of the Year, I mean, he had a tremendous rushing consistency these last six games of the year, where he rushed for over 100 yards in each of those games. So just tremendous. 3 touchdowns against I think Dallas he had too. So that was just tremendous. So they needed him. We talked about it earlier. Like if they got to get him, what's the key to Packers? They got to get Jones back healthy, and
Hmm.
he did. He came back healthy, and he doesn't come back healthy. I don't know if the Packers make the playoffs. So it's not just one guy. It's a team effort, and he was part of that team. They definitely needed him. So the other cool part about a lot of the awards that you gave out for your rankings, a lot of these guys are first or second year players. And a lot of these
Yeah.
guys were drafted by Brian Gutekunst. And when you look at the draft he had in 2022 and 2023, it's just tremendous. The guys that you mentioned on your awards, um, Zach Tom was a 22 draft pick, Romeo Dobbs, Rasheed Walker. He was a 7th rounder, by the way. And we have him ranked as winning an award. So that's pretty good production out of the 7th round. Green Bay does so well with later round draft picks, it seems. Yeah, maybe Carlson's a miss, but they've hit on more of them. And then this
Yeah.
year they hit on Carl Brooks. He was a 6th rounder, and the guy he did really well. Zach Tom, he was drafted in 2022. Forgot him. The guy only gave up 2 sacks and 3 penalties all year. So, and he was a 5th rounder. So Packers have really, when you can draft well, you really set up your team for success. And I look back when the Chicago Bears won their Super Bowl, the 82 Bears, or was it the 85 Bears? I can't, I think it was 85 Bears. The 85 Bears. They, you look back at their 3 previous drafts, and a lot of those players were stars on that Super Bowl team. They drafted well. And if you can do that and they can produce, it will pay dividends. And I think we've seen it early on in Green Bay, and then they've had success. They went deep into the playoffs. So drafts do matter.
Yeah. For sure. Just a few quick stats that I wanted to look up quick that
Hmm.
I had forgotten. Jaden Reed finished his rookie season with 64 receptions for 793 yards and 8 touchdowns. His 64 receptions set the team's franchise record for most receptions in a single season by a rookie. The record was previously held by Sterling Sharp.
That's right.
So that's a big record
Pretty good
for Jaden
company.
Reed. Yeah, I would say so. And then Aaron Jones, I have a few stats here about him, some fun stats about him versus the Cowboys. He is the second player in league history to rush for at least 100 yards and 1 touchdown against another opponent in 4 straight games. So the last 4 times the
Hmm.
Packers have played the Cowboys, Aaron Jones has rushed for at least 100 yards and at least 1 touchdown. The only other player to ever do that is former Chargers star running back LaDainian Tomlinson,
Okay.
who did it against the Cleveland Browns. So pretty impressive there for Aaron
Excellent.
Jones. We all know how good he is against the Cowboys. It's really fun to watch him play the Cowboys for sure. And I still remember, I believe it was on Thanksgiving. He ran for what was it, 4 touchdowns. It was a lot of touchdowns. He just kept running for another touchdown, and he got fined for taunting in that game too because he had a neat little wave on one of his touchdowns, which I absolutely loved. Also, another quick record here. He's the first player in franchise history to record 5 consecutive 100-yard rushing games. Um, Starting, and I guess it was week 16, he ran for over 100 yards all the way through the divisional round against the 49ers. And yeah, 5 straight. So that's also quite impressive there for Aaron Jones. Started it against the Panthers, I guess, and did it against the Panthers, Vikings, Bears, Cowboys, and 49ers.
Well, you have a good
So, I mean,
memory. You have a good memory. So I found it. I looked it up for you. You were spot on. So he did get 4 touchdowns. Jones did against the Cowboys.
okay.
107 yards rushing, 75 receiving yards. They
Yeah.
won 34-24, but he had 4 touchdowns in that game. That was in 2019.
Yeah.
So there you
That
go.
was I was able to watch that whole game, and so
Hmm.
that was what stood out to me. Aaron Jones, just such a fun player to watch.
Hmm.
All right, that will about wrap things up. Uh, any other thoughts you have here, real quick?
No, it was appreciate you having me on. It was a fun show. I think we covered a lot of good topics, and um,
Yep.
looking forward to even the off season, the upcoming draft, just to
Yeah.
see where Green Bay goes with things. That'll be kind of a fun thing to watch and keep an eye on, and just how the team starts gelling with their new defensive coordinator, what they do in the kicker situation. Are they going to draft a running back? Jones is 29. Are they going to bring in someone to kind of eventually be the next guy? Might not be a bad strategy. I think Jones has still got a lot left, and I think he still ride him. But and he loves playing in Green Bay, so he's a
Yeah.
Packer. He's kind of like Donald Driver,
Yep.
right? He's a Packer, and
Yep.
I think as long as he can play at a high level, you reward that, and you keep
Yep.
rolling with him.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so looking forward to that. But yeah, that's a lot to look forward to in this off season.
Yeah. I mean, keep an eye on free agency too. Goody
Right.
said that they have the potential to do something in free agency as well. So yeah, should be a fun off season. Thanks for coming on. It's a lot of fun as usual. And I
Yeah.
guess I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, my line man.